Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week, we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month, and there's also a free trial option. And that's where I'm posting all of my regular written recruiting content. The link is also in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. I'm also appearing weekly on the Horns Down podcast YouTube channel with Chris with a K and Jason Watkins of the Hall of Fame podcast. You can be notified of those live streams by subscribing to the Sooners 360 YouTube channel. Simply go to youtube.com, search for Sooners 360. You'll find the channel and click subscribe. You can also find those broadcasts to watch afterwards by just going to the live section of the Sooners 360 channel. And we're talking about OU recruiting, OU season, things in college football impacting recruiting, things along those lines. So that's also happening. I'll be doing one again this week talking about the recruiting class and having some really good discussions about what that means for OU's overall recruiting efforts and kind of what's going on. So let's jump to the episode. It is episode 130, OU's Recruiting Heater. As always, we start with verbal commitment news, and we have commitments to talk about, which is why we have the very topic of OU's Recruiting Heater. Right now, things are hot with OU recruiting. 3 commitments, new commitments. I'm recording this Tuesday night. So I will talk about what I think is going to happen the rest of the week or the next week or the next 3 or 4 days. So I will talk a little bit about that coming up, but we'll start with the commitments and go from there. So let's just talk about the 3 commitments real quick. Sunday night, OU got a commitment from Matthew Nelson, the defensive end from Arkansas. Then they got a commitment on Monday from Noah Best, the offensive lineman from Midlothian, Texas. Then, while I was at the movies watching the John Wick Ballerina movie, OU got a commitment from Derek Johnson II, the DB from California. So, on Monday, for those of you who don't know and don't follow him, Hayes Fawcett is a part of the On3 website brand, and he generally has gotten a reputation and has somehow gotten to be the graphic generator for when players want to announce commitments. So he creates the graphics they use on Twitter. So this has enabled Hayes to sort of get advanced knowledge about commitments coming because players and prospects contact him and say, hey, I'd like this graphic for Notre Dame. I'm choosing Notre Dame, and I'd like you to get it to me by Wednesday because that's when I'm going to commit. So he ends up getting advanced knowledge of commitments through this process. So on Monday, out of like nowhere, he posts basically an emoji of a horse/pony icon, and then he indicates ×3. Indicating that he's got 3. He knows of 3 commitments coming for OU, and then he posts the GIF of Brent doing Boomer Sooner with the punch on the airplane right after he got hired. It was the plane that was coming from Clemson. So he said OU's got 3 commitments that he's got graphics and preparation for. Now, Noah Best is one of them. I'm not sure Derek Johnson is one of them. He might be. But we definitely have let's just say for let's assume Derek Johnson was one of them. Okay, I don't know that he wasn't, but let's just go with that, because Derek actually he verbally committed with an OU on an OU podcast. He made that announcement on when they were interviewing him, so it was kind of a cool moment. I'll double check the podcast that got that. I'm sorry, I don't have that in my notes right now. So he could be, but there's definitely another commitment coming. And I'll give you my best guess on what's going on and where that fits. But that's sort of so, and there's at least 3 or 4 other guys that various sites and various information I've received indicate other names that are quite possible to OU coming out of this weekend. So let's go in depth on the commitments real quick. And then I'll talk about the players I'll talk about a little about the weekend and break the players up into sort of 3 groups of where they are. So first, let's talk about Matthew Nelson, the defensive end from Arkansas. He's 6'5", 215 pounds. Roughly 215. I think he was 212 when he recently camped at OU. Matthew he plays at Bryant, Arkansas. Ja'Cory Smith, the OU verbal linebacker, is his high school teammate. Ja'Cory's transferred to Bryant. He was previously playing with Amarian Robinson, who signed with OU last year. So there's kind of there's an Arkansas connection sort of film between those 3 guys. You can put them all, kind of connect them. He camped. He's basically what I call he's the embodiment of the new Jim Nagy process. Jim and his staff basically found Matthew Nelson on film, on video, his highlights in April, and offered him. OU hadn't previously offered him. His offer list was not that impressive. It was like Tulane and Memphis. He was flying just under the radar. So Nagy found his film, and Nelson in his highlight reel he's explosive, he's long, he's twitchy, he's making plays behind the line of scrimmage. His pursuit is excellent. His motor runs hot, and he looks huge from like a wingspan, height standpoint, and he is. So he has, and it's a term that you're going to hate to hear, and it's going to come around more and more. He has NFL measurables. He just does. He's 6'5", big wingspan, and his weight, we'll get to that in a second, will eventually, and his frame totally supports the idea of him carrying more weight. And why is he underweight right now? We'll get to that in a sec. This is a very easy explanation. So, he had about 38 tackles last year, 13 tackles for loss, which means, his tackle for loss production is very high because he's constantly making plays in the backfield. And he only has 2 sacks, but he's getting after the quarterback, and he is in the backfield all day in his highlight reel. So the other element of Nelson to keep in mind, and obviously something Nagy's going to pay attention to, and is a variable, because this becomes when you look back at NFL guys and sort of their history as high school players, some things show up quite a bit, and track performance and elite track elements, they play into that profile, and they translate into a player who, when they focus on football, is able to it's traits that translate to football. Let's just say that to simplify that. And Matthew Nelson is a state champion in the 110 meter hurdles at 6'5", 210, 205, whatever he usually runs at. So he's a sprinter hurdler in high school. So he's not putting on a bunch of bulky weight, because that doesn't help. So that's the reason why his weight is low. He's also a high school wrestler. I don't think he's as proficient wrestling as he is as a track athlete, but he's got all those track abilities. He posted a 7:27 60-meter time, which is really good for his size. So he's got all the sort of track measurables that tell you that the explosive ability you see on film, that's where it's coming from. It's legit. So OU offered him. He quickly came to an OU camp session in May and redid his visit schedule to get to OU as fast as possible, and he committed. So everyone's going to look at him and see a 3-star. Well, since he's gotten the OU offer and the services have all become aware, they see the unranked element. He was unranked by most of the services for a while. They just didn't rank him, didn't evaluate him, didn't know who he was. But since it's become clear that the OU is targeting him, he's got evaluation rankings from On3, 247, and Rivals, and they all have him as a high 3-star. If he has a big senior year, it's totally possible he could become a low 4-star. That's completely possible with his frame and the attention that he now has. He's an OU verbal. He's going to get reevaluated after his senior year. That's just the sad reality of the recruiting business. So that's Matthew Nelson. I'm big on him. I love the film. I love the evaluation. I love the value of this pick. He needs 2 years to develop, probably redshirt season and maybe another season to work on that. OU has the defensive end depth to do that probably and can let him develop. And while he's behind some other defensive ends OU was recruiting now in rankings and really in his level of play and readiness to play, in 2 years, he could be 6'5", 245 and still running, like a 4.6 40 and be every bit as good as other guys that OU, could have recruited who may be a little more maxed out, maybe have less development runway. And we're starting to see Miguel Chavis develop defensive ends, improve. The defensive ends are starting to improve year over year, much like defensive tackles under Todd Bates. So I like this pickup. I like he's got a sky high potential. The ceiling is the measurables are all there. OU just has to develop him. So the next verbal commitment is Noah Best from Midlothian, Texas. He's 6'4", about 290 right now. He's super lean at that 6'4", 290. He could easily add 20, 25 pounds, maybe 30 pounds, play at like 315, 320, be an offensive guard for the Sooners. He's very athletic. I just rewatched his film, his junior year highlights. He plays tackle for Midlothian. He's smashing bigger defensive linemen, and he is shoving smaller defensive ends 10 to 15 yards downfield from his tackle position. Very physical, good athlete. He camped at OU last year, did such a good job that he got an offer from Bill. So Bill knows him. He's been to Norman 5 or 6 times since then. He's familiar with Bill, knows Bill really well, knows how he's going to be coached and wants to be coached by Bill. And Bill knows that he's coachable because he coached him at the camp event. He knows what he's able to do to get the best out of Noah Best. So that's the puns are going to be quite a bit if Noah is as talented as I think he could be. He's a 4-star by one service by Rivals. The other services have him very close to 4-star status. Again, I think there's a chance Noah is a composite 4-star, top 300 type player by the time his senior season is done. At some point, I don't really care. Bill thinks he's is going to be an excellent offensive guard, and Bill Biedenbaugh whenever Bill's had a chance to evaluate kids in camp and then bring them in, it's always been that's been a higher level of success for Bill when he's recruiting offensive linemen. So And again, this has been 12 months coming. Noah's, I think, grew up in Owasso, and then moved to Texas. When he was, I think when he was in like elementary school, I think. So he's got connections and family connections back to Oklahoma. Big pickup. SMU was really the only competitor here, and I'm not sure how big a competitor they really were. I know they've taken some players from the Sooners, principally Toa Katoa, but this is a big pickup, and obviously Noah. I think Noah was just waiting for his official visit as like the last shove before picking the Sooners, and that's kind of how it worked out. So the last commitment is Derek Johnson, the second. His dad is Derek Johnson too. The cornerback from California, from Merida, California. He's 6'2", about 170 pounds. I'll be honest, I didn't see this coming. If you listen to the podcast preview on Saturday as the visit weekend just started, I didn't think Derek was one of the players that OU was going to get a commitment from. I was a little worried the visit might have gotten canceled or he wasn't going to show up. But he obviously made the visit to Norman. To the best of my knowledge, this was his first visit to OU. He may have come in for a junior day, but I don't recall that. Don't recall that happening, but it's possible. I'll have to double check. But Derek committed to OU today on Tuesday. He's again, like Matt Nelson, he has elite measurables. He's 6'1 and a half, 6'2. You could easily put 10, 15 pounds on his frame, once he's, training table, strength and conditioning, etc. But you can't coach 6'2. And if you're talking about NFL measurables at cornerback, 6 foot and above is ideal. So 6'2 is great. So I haven't watched his film in a while. I went back and watched it today, and his film's really good. He's very physical. He's breaking up wide receiver screens. He's blanketing receivers downfield. He also plays wide receiver, does a really good job there. You love DBs playing wide receiver because that's the best sign that they have elite ball skills. And every dropped interception hurts you a little bit on defense. His stats are good. He had interceptions and pass breakups last year. A good number of tackles from the cornerback position. It's really good film. He's a high 3-star by all of the services. Will he stay there? I don't know. I think his junior film is really good. I think he may be a little underrated. It's possible he could jump up to 4-star status with at least one or two of the services. He's right there as well, just like Noah Best is with 247 and On3. So it's a good pickup. And, I've been talking about OU's struggle to find cornerback prospects. So being able to get a 6'2", 170-pound cornerback in a year where there's no quarterbacks in state. Texas, there's limited numbers of corners. So to be able to pick up a corner from California is kind of a big deal. And there's also sort of, along with Matthew Nelson and Derek Johnson have something in common. They both have 2027 prospects that are brothers. Derek Johnson's brother is Darius Johnson, and he's a top 100 player by On3. And Matthew Nelson has a brother, Sam Nelson, who is 6'3", 220, just camped at OU, looked really good, could be a linebacker, could be an edge, figure out where he grows and where that situation develops. He didn't get an OU offer. Darius Johnson, I'm pretty sure, has an OU offer. So, that's just a side note that, you may be leading to 2 more guys for 2027. And if I haven't mentioned it, Derek Johnson the first, Derek Johnson's dad, was an NFL player, was a DB out of the University of Washington. So you always love that kind of NFL genetics, just like Torrey Blaylock. So you love those kind of connections. Malik Hawkins, his dad, ex-Sooner Mike Hawkins. I like that lineage. I like hearing that they understand hard work, and they understand what it takes to be professionals. So those are the three commitments. It's moved OU up on the various recruiting sites. Everybody else is getting commitments, so things are really pretty fluid. But on Rivals, when you do average per recruit, OU is somewhere around 16, 17 in the nation. So, because right now, like lots of teams have more verbals than OU, and on On3 and 247 and Rivals, that quantity element kind of kicks in. So it's not an apples to apples kind of comparison with the sites. USC has like 29 kids and is first everywhere because they have 29 kids. So that's the verbal commitments, but OU just had a fantastic weekend. Feedback has been just excellent from the visit. The 16 they had 16 kids on campus. 15 were uncommitted. The only committed kid was Ja'Cory Smith. And I'm going to go ahead and run through the remaining kids that visited that haven't committed and let you know where I think they are. So this next group I'm going to call the heavy leans OU leading group. And there is probably at least one verbal commitment coming out of this, and we'll start right off with that. So Tavion Branch, who I've talked about before on the podcast, big fan of Tavion. Really hope he can be a Sooner. He's announcing tomorrow, and all indications seem to be that it's either going to be Rutgers or OU, and my sources think that OU is in the lead and should get Tavion Branch's signature tomorrow. His verbal commitment. There's been crystal balls put in for him to OU, predictions from other places, most notably Sooner Scoop. And Tavion, to just recap, a lot of teams viewed him as an offensive guard prospect. But Todd Bates took one look at his film, and he plays both sides of the ball because he's just that talented as an offensive lineman, and it's not that uncommon in high school, and says, no, you're a defensive tackle. I'm going to recruit you only as a defensive tackle. Something happens at OU and you want to play offensive guard, Bill's fine with that, but I'm bringing you in to be a defensive tackle and turn you into an elite defensive tackle. And Tavion was measured at a recent Under Armour Combine as 6'4", 295. He also posted a 4.95 40 and a 10-yard dash of 1.76. Those are NFL Combine defensive tackle numbers. He's at 6'4", 295. He is still lean. He's in good shape. He's a thick kid, but there is easy room to add another 10, 15 pounds to him, make him an athletic 315, 320. And that's the zero technique for OU. Or if you have another zero technique, he can play the 3-tech, or you can mix and match guys. Generally speaking, in the SEC, give me every 6'4", 320-pound athletic defensive tackle I can get my hands on. So I think that announcement's happening tomorrow, and I think it will go OU's way. Tyler Ruxer, the tight end from Indiana, also visited. That visit went fantastic. He has a July 7th announcement, but he sounds like he may end his recruiting process, silently kind of commit, and then have an announcement at his high school with his high school teammate, which he's been committed to for a while. But I think there's a good chance that will be Oklahoma, and that on July 7th, you will get Tyler Ruxer's commitment. At least that's the way it's trending right now. The other heavy lean where maybe a commitment's about to happen or could happen in the next 10 days is the other cornerback who visited, Danny Odom from Florida. Now that's ODEM, not to be confused with wide receiver Danielle Odom from California, who's also verbal to OU, at least he is right now. And Danny Odom is, again, he's 6'2", 180 pounds. His film is excellent. He's ranked in the top 100 by Rivals. I could see that being a consensus decision by the recruiting services by the time their rankings all mix up and mix around. I'm really shocked that OU has made up this ground with Danny Odom, that they got Derek Johnson. The thought of OU coming out of this class with two 6'2" cornerbacks that are perfect fits for their defense, have NFL measurables is stunning. I've done predictions about this recruiting class where I felt like OU might just skip cornerback. And the thought of them coming out with two is just kind of amazing. Odom probably could also play safety. He's big enough. He's physical enough, and that would give you almost like an elite coverage safety to combine with the other cornerbacks you have out there. So there's some potential for that, possibly. But I think those three players definitely, there's a chance that they are, by July 7th, all three of them are Sooners. The other guy I think that is trending heavily towards an OU commitment is Braxton Lindsey, the linebacker from Arkansas. He hasn't set a date. He's got some more visits to take, but OU's got the momentum right now, and someone's got to seriously. It's going to take a lot, I think, to kind of derail that. OU heavily pitched him being the next Mike linebacker for OU. That's where he slots. He's 6'3", 220. He's a big physical athlete, really good at linebacker. Plays tight end as well, so he's got good ball skills. He's a good athlete, but he's a linebacker. And next to Ja'Cory Smith, that gives you a Will and a Mike. Obviously, Bo Jandro is floating out there, and he could be the third linebacker, and maybe he can float between those two positions. We'll have to see how that goes. He was visiting Oregon and Texas before he gets to Norman, but OU obviously has his brother Nico in the fold. And the last two guys I think OU has a heavy lead on, but I don't think they're yet in the frame of making a commitment date. The first one is Deacon Schmidt, the offensive tackle from Colorado. He's 6'5", 320. He has a Bama visit and I think Notre Dame coming up. I know Bama's right. And OU's been recruiting him for a year. Just like Noah Best, he camped at OU, got the OU offer. He's a right tackle that fits the OU offensive line scheme. He's physical. He's worked really hard on his mobility. Again, I think he's been in Norman 4 or 5 times. Colorado's probably the other program that's more of a factor. So we'll see how this shakes out, but he definitely was impacted. Definitely OU had a great visit with him. He had again, being with Bill, seeing how Bill would use him, going over film, all those things reinforcing Deacon Schmidt's interest in OU. Then the last guy I think OU probably has a heavy lead on, a big lead on, is Dallas Dickerson, the wide receiver from Georgia. He's 6'1", about 180 pounds. He's the speedster, the guy with the 10.3 100-meter time. Probably a 4.4 flat kind of guy. It looks like in some interviews he's talked about making a decision by July 4th. So the question is Georgia Tech is involved, Florida's involved. Florida just got another wide receiver verbal, so I don't know where they fit in with Dallas Dickerson. Georgia Tech, that's not a real passing game offense. They run the ball. They're, obviously it's a local school, good academics. So he could choose Georgia Tech. They've got a little bit of recruiting momentum going, program momentum going. But, if he wants to go to a high-flying passing offense, that's just not Georgia Tech, and it's not going to be Georgia Tech. So those are the guys I think are heavy leans. I think if Braxton Lindsey decides to make an early announcement, I think there's a chance that OU goes 6 for 6 with that group. So another elite cornerback, second, or the elite cornerback. I still love Derek Johnson's film. Big defensive tackle, second tight end, giving you a great tight end class of Ryder Mix and Tyler Ruxer. The Mike linebacker you need, the right tackle you'd like to go with the 2 interior prospects you have right now, and then the speedster wide receiver that you'd like to add. Size, got some size, but also just speed. So I think OU grabbed a lead with the following guys. I think they were maybe even with some programs, maybe trailing with some programs before the weekend. And the three guys I'm going to go with are Jaden Petit, the wide receiver from Florida, 6'4", 200 pounds, just physically dominant looking in his highlights. Be the big wide receiver that you'd like in the class. I think if OU was to get him before Zachary Turner at Duncanville decided, maybe they would just stick with Jaden Petit. So have to see what happens with Daniel Odom, the California wide receiver, because he's taking visits elsewhere. I think a decommitment is a strong possibility. So, but Jaden Petit, he's back in Norman. Sounds like he had a great visit. If he shuts recruiting down, I could see an OU commitment happening, but he's got other schools to visit. So it's Florida. We'll see how things shake out there. Then Davion Gross, the elite top 50 in the nation playmaker from Frisco Lone Star. He's 6'2.5", 6'3", 190 pounds. Just a dominant playmaker, elite athlete. OU and Baylor seems to be locked in a battle. One thing about Gross is his family on his mom's side are Sooner fans and Sooner alums. So that if OU figures out all the other pieces, that could certainly push OU over the top. I think he's probably more like a late July, early August kind of decision. But OU, I think, definitely countered whatever Baylor's been doing and has grabbed a lead of some kind there. Then the last defense, one of the other defensive linemen to visit is from Virginia, T-Ron Richardson, 6'5", 275, just agile, athletic, explosive. I think OU's grabbed a lead there. I think if Tavion Branch commits on Wednesday, then OU's going to have to start figuring out where they are with their remaining two slots at D-line. And it could be a first guy grabs, and then they'll have to focus on, and then they'll focus where they're going to go next. I think it's interesting because I think Richardson's a 3-tech for OU. He's a huge prospect. He's got a huge wingspan, huge frame. He could be 315 pounds. So he could just play anywhere on the D line at some point once he develops. But I think mostly he's a 3-tech. So those are the three guys where I think OU's grabbed a lead, but I'm not anticipating a commitment happening anytime soon. But I didn't see Derek Johnson coming. So OU's done such a good job with this weekend. The additional staff that OU has, such as Kevin Wilson helping with the O-line, we're starting to see Jim Nagy being involved in recruiting, talking to kids about their NFL futures, what they need to do, how OU's going to get them there, where Nagy sees them as prospects, and what he feels like they need to do to get to the NFL. I think that's starting to have an impact. Nagy has a staff. His staff has been announced. Lake Dawson was added to it, a longtime NFL scout with serious experience. OU has a fantastic scouting department now, separate from the football coaching staff. And when you combine those two sets of eyes, I think it's going to really help OU in their recruiting and getting their recruiting message across. So they nailed the weekend. I haven't heard any feedback from any recruit that is negative in any way. And sometimes kids will visit a place and OU would be their last place they visited, and they'll just verbal somewhere else. They were just punching the clock. This is what I told my parents I'd visit OU, and then they then they commit elsewhere. That happens all the time previously and in recruiting. But it was very focused, lots of attention. Somehow Brent was I've seen multiple interviews where Brent has spent hours with each recruit somehow. OU did a good job matching up hosts and the coaching staff with additional resources. You've got Arbuckle and Kuyeski for quarterbacks and for skill guys. So Emmett Jones has even more help with the skill folks. Joe John Finley now has Kevin Wilson, can also help him as well with tight ends. Because, Kevin Wilson, developed any number of good tight ends at OU, Jermaine Gresham principally, but also Joe John Finley. So, I think the OU's just got more resources and staff and more coordination in terms of how to make weekends work. In the past, under Stoops, there would sometimes be some messy visits and things didn't quite work right. But Brent really has this official visit stuff down. It's locked down. This is where OU thrives in June with their targets and have been executing excellent official visits. All right, so there's two prospects I don't really know what to do with right now. The first one's Desmond Green, the offensive guard from South Carolina, 6'4", 340. UGA, Clemson, Tennessee. I just don't know how OU gets him out of that region right now. He doesn't have any natural connections to OU. He did visit on his own dime. He'd be a great fit in the OU offensive line. You take some weight off him and reproportion it and lean him up. He's going to be an absolute mauler at offensive guard. OU does have some options there. I think on the 20th, Devon Robinson, the Houston area prospect, is visiting, who also would be a great guard there. Could Green be a right tackle? I'll have to go back and look at his film, but I think he's probably an interior guy. And the other guy is Elijah Golden, the defensive tackle from Florida. He's 6'4", 275. He's a 3-tech. And I went back and watched his film, T-Ron Richardson's film, and Taj Overton's film. And Golden is explosive. He's raw, but there's a twitchy explosiveness to him that just sort of leaps out of his highlights. But he's got a Notre Dame visit coming up. Maybe it's just the name Golden and that he belongs at Notre Dame that's making me think Notre Dame's going to lead. Vatek is also involved. I don't know. I think this could be something that plays into OU, but again, they're going to start to get into some interesting numbers with a D line if they get Tavion Branch on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens there. But I think Green and Golden are probably the longer shots. But again, guys, on my Patreon, and I'd listed long shots, and I thought Derek Johnson was one. So there are things at play with OU's recruiting heater right now that make things just a little unpredictable. All right, so I buried Bo Bentley to the end. He had a great visit. John Mateer was with him a lot, basically his host. And John has been selling OU. He's all in and selling and improving OU. For a guy who transferred, he's doing maybe even a better job than Dylan Gabriel did at embracing Sooners, this program, and advancing the program. LSU, obviously, still looming around. Like I said, I heard the OU visit was a fantastic visit. Arbuckle and Kuyeski, were able to work him. Brent obviously spent time with him. He's basically gone silent and has sent to all of the recruiting services basically a press release saying, "Don't bother me. I'm sitting down with my family, and we're thinking about our process." If I had to guess, he's going to pull the trigger before or while he's at Elite 11. And that's next week, the middle of next week, right before OU's Champ Barbecue event. Put a gun to my head, I think OU wins this recruiting battle. But he's now, a lot can go in and a lot can happen over the next week or so. But my sources indicate they feel like OU did enough to grab a lead coming out of this weekend, and that their presentation, their recruiting strategy put OU in a place to get his verbal commitment. I could be wrong on that. It's certainly, there's some fluidity to this. that is difficult to predict. I don't like the combination of this situation and Jaden O'Neal. Sorry, I don't want to call him McNeil. I know it's Jaden O'Neal. Sorry about that, Jaden and Jaron. They're going to FSU this weekend. FSU badly wants Jaden. Jaden's going to throw at the OU camp on Thursday, so OU gets a touch point before he does go. It's just OU has just generated a high-stakes game of roulette with the way they've handled this, and it could bite them in the ass, and they could lose both kids. And that's not the recruiting momentum we need. We're on a heater right now. Let's not lose momentum. So that's where we stand right now. I'll do another podcast on Friday night, post on Saturday morning, just an update on where we stand, even if it's a little short, because we'll at least hopefully have one commit to talk about. Hopefully should have some updates on other kids and maybe some updates on what's going on about the June 20th Barbecue U event. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Don't forget to leave a rating. Please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content. And again, the Patreon site keeps this podcast free. If you like this podcast, please go to patreon.com, search for Sooners360, sign up for a trial. Give it 30 days, see how you like it. But it's the driving mechanism that allows me to do this podcast and give you guys 40 minutes of recruiting content on free platforms. Thanks, everyone.